Did you know that in the middle of a busy suburban strip mall in broad daylight, 5 women were murdered in under 9 minutes, and nobody has ever been caught? It happened at a Lane Bryant store outside Chicago. There were witnesses nearby, there was a 911 call, and yet the killer walked out and vanished into thin air. This is one of the most disturbing cold cases in American history. Here is why it still matters. Because the person who did it may still be walking around today, and the reason they were never caught is stranger than any ghost story. Let me set the scene. It's the morning of February 2nd, 2008. Tinley Park, Illinois, a quiet, ordinary suburb southwest of Chicago. The kind of place where nothing happens. The key players are 5 women simply doing their jobs and shopping at a Lane Bryant clothing store in the Brookside Marketplace Mall. But here is where it turns dark. There's a number in this case that genuinely unsettles me. It's coming. The store had just opened. Rhoda McFarland, the 42-year-old manager, was inside with a few employees and early customers. Then, a man walked in. According to all that's interesting, this man claimed to be making a delivery. He seemed unremarkable, which is exactly why nobody panicked. He was calm. He blended in. That's the first detail that should chill you, because it means predators don't always look like predators. Sometimes they look like the guy holding a clipboard. What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. The man forced the women into a back room. He tied them up, and then, in a matter of minutes, he opened fire. Rhoda McFarland was killed. So were customers Carrie Hudek-Chuso, Jennifer Bishop, and employees Sarah Safransky and Connie Woolfolk. 5 women. Gone. Just like that. But there was a 6th woman, and she is the reason we know anything at all. She was shot in the neck. The bullet should have killed her. It didn't. She played dead, lying perfectly still among her murdered co-workers and customers, listening as the gunman finished and left. Then, bleeding, terrified, she crawled to a phone and called 911. Think about the nerve that took. Think about lying in silence, pretending to be a corpse, praying he wouldn't fire again. She survived, and she gave police a description. If you're getting something out of this, a like pushes it further. So investigators had a survivor. They had a description. They had a crime scene in a public mall. You'd think this case would close in days. It didn't. Not in weeks, not in years, but the part most people miss is still coming. Here's the angle that nobody talks about enough. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. Yes, the killer took some money and phones, but the sheer brutality, 5 people executed to cover a theft that netted almost nothing, doesn't add up. Investigators have long suspected this was something darker, that the robbery was a cover. That killing was the point. The survivor described the shooter as a black man, roughly 6 feet tall, in his 20s or 30s, wearing dark clothing. Police released a sketch. Tips poured in, thousands of them. The FBI got involved. A reward climbed higher and higher. And still, nothing stuck. Here's where the villain becomes a ghost. The Tinley Park Police Department has chased down leads for over 15 years. They've examined DNA. They've re-interviewed witnesses. They've followed suspects who looked promising, and every single one slipped away, cleared or uncharged. The victims here are obvious and heartbreaking. 5 women, mothers, wives, co-workers, who did nothing but show up that morning. But there's another victim, an entire community that never got closure. Families who buried their loved ones and still, all these years later, have no name to hang their grief on. Think about what that means for you personally. This happened in a public place, in daylight, with a witness who lived. If a case with this much evidence can go cold, what does that say about how thin the line really is between getting caught and getting away with everything? The case became known locally as haunted, not because of literal ghosts, but because it refuses to rest. Detectives who worked it have said it stays with them. It's the one that got away. The last piece is the one that reframes everything. So here's the number that stops me. 5 women murdered in roughly 9 minutes. That's how fast it happened. 9 minutes to destroy 5 lives and shatter a town forever. And in more than 15 years since, with DNA evidence, a living eyewitness, a national manhunt, and a reward that reached $100,000, not one arrest has ever been made. Now here's the insight that ties it all together. The reason this case haunts investigators isn't just that it's unsolved, it's that everything went right for the investigation, and it still failed. A survivor lived. Physical evidence was recovered. The scene was fresh. By every rule of criminology, this should have been solved. And it wasn't. That's the terrifying truth, buried in the Lane Bryant murders. Sometimes the system does everything correctly, and the answer still slips through. The killer didn't outsmart a broken process. He outran a working one. Here is my prediction. This case will eventually break, not through old-fashioned detective work, but through genetic genealogy, the same technology that finally caught the Golden State Killer decades after his crimes. If the killer left DNA behind, and investigators say evidence exists, it's only a matter of time before a distant cousin uploads a spit sample to an ancestry site and unknowingly hands police a name. The man who walked into that store, thinking he'd disappeared forever, may not have escaped at all. He may just be waiting for science to catch up. Before I go, here is your historical footnote of the day. The reason genetic genealogy matters here traces back to a woman named Bridget Bishop, no relation to the victims, the first person executed in the Salem witch trials of 1692. For centuries, people were convicted on nothing but rumor, spectral evidence, and fear. No proof, no DNA, just accusation. It took over 300 years for justice to shift from superstition to science. And now that same science may crack a case that human witnesses never could. That is your footnote for today. 5 women, 9 minutes, and a killer still unnamed after more than 15 years. If you think modern forensics will finally close this case, tell me in the comments. Want more like this? Subscribe to Weird History, a fresh one daily.